This one has been fully operational since 2010. We filled it in 2011 to within 200 acre-feet of full gated control. It was quite a sight. It was 3 square miles of just solid water.
This project by itself reduces the peak flows at Tinta by about 50%. The existing levee system that they have in town, can now protect them quite easily.
Since we put the North Ottawa project in, the town of Tinta has not had to sandbag a bit.
Tinta used to be always a big problem area, and we've essentially eliminated the flood from them.
Further downstream, the next place on the river is Wahpeton and Breckenridge, and they have their level of protection built to a certain height, storing their water in North Ottawa. You can take some of that peak off, so they have more freeboard within the dikes and the structures they already have built. That's just a win for them too. And hence it will go downstream all the way to a Fargo-Moorhead. And it's worked marvelously ever since it first operated. 2009, 10, and 11 were all big water years in the valley. And again this year it stored water. It's a great model from many perspectives.
Everything around it now dries out 3 to 4 weeks earlier than what it did before. They were actually in the field that much sooner than what they had been.
The water retention area that the Bois de Sioux is in charge of, it turned into a win-win. It controls the spring runoff, and we've never had a problem with water since then.
You have to realize there's 2 floods, a flood in the spring and a flood that could happen in June.
In the summertime, which was probably our main concern, that's what we're looking at as far as the biggest benefit to get out of that is being able to hold that big rain that's upstream of us. It'll be metered out in a way that the river can handle it and still give us a chance to get rid of our water. If you run into a summer where it's kind of wet in the whole entire area, and upstream of us, why they would get a big rain, like a 4, 5, or 6 inch rain, why that water all comes barreling down the river without any controls to it, and then the river will probably start backing up into our fields, and of course when that happens, why our crop is pretty much going to be destroyed.
If we get a big summer rain, it would wipe all of this out down here. It only maybe sit 3, 4, 5 inches deep out there, but if it sat for more than a day, it took the crop.
That's a bad deal for this area.
When farmers lose a crop, they basically lost the fuel, the fertilizer, everything that went into trying to grow that crop.
I think it was the second week of June, we had about 3.5 inches of rain come down, and there was surface runoff the fields. And all the surface runoff, it looks like a chocolate malt. It always does. I mean, the soil is just floating in the water going downstream.
Most of the erosion that we have off the ag land, and most of the pollutants that come off the ag land come off during periods of high runoff. If you can do a better job of controlling the runoff, the water quality in the downstream areas will be that much better.
Everybody has kind of come to the same conclusion that it does help.
People have kind of changed their tune a little bit. A lot of people were skeptical about this idea when we first started, but now they see it on the ground and they see how it functions, and they see that it is possible to continue doing some ag production inside them. We've gained a lot more acceptance.
One of our major opponents of the project is renting land inside the project area. We got cash rent approaching $400 an acre inside the flood impoundment. Before it was less than $100. They know unless it's a catastrophic June rain, we can keep the water off of that.
We got a dike all the way around it, and we take the water that comes in that might have flooded that crop and put it on the 1 square mile. We actually produce more crop out there now on less acreage, and there's certainly less environmental impacts associated with that.
We've increased the productivity of the land inside the impoundment. The people downstream that would get the spring flood, 20 sections of land improved there, not even counting what we're doing for the city of Breckenridge and Fargo. That one section has made a lot of sections tremendously better. By renting it out, we have a fund, a maintenance fund for the projects, pay the local taxes, have a good ag economy. That's what we're all about out here, is an ag economy.
The more projects that we can get like this, why the more help we're going to get out of them.
We're proving to the ag community that we can use flood control units for flood control and still farm parts of them.
It's been a pretty good example of how you can build flood control impoundments on a non-traditional landscape out in the flat country, which is what we have in the Red River Basin. There aren't a lot of real natural dam sites.
And I think it exceeded all of the expectations as far as the storage working very well, the upland or the upstream areas being drained better. That was done. The natural resource enhancements, I think that exceeded people's expectations too.
It provides base flow for the Rabbit River.
And you take a year like last year when they were distributing a little water into the Rabbit River.
We've got our northern spawning. The fingerlings never get back to the lake because the rivers go dry. This way, we can put a continual flow in that river. We bring our spawn back to the lake. It's countless, the number of things that this will do by taking care of the water.
The use by waterfowl of the impoundment is really more than anyone anticipated. We get a lot of migrating birds in the spring, and we get a lot of migrating birds in the fall. And we also have an awful lot of nesting birds out there, which was totally unexpected. Virtually all of the migratory waterfowl species in Minnesota at least made an appearance there.
2 years ago in the spring, when the wildlife migration was going on, at that time we had all 3 sections. She was at capacity full. And the Minnesota DNR commissioner come out and he took one look and he said the filming crews will be here tomorrow. And then we keep one whole section for a pond during the summer. The environmental benefits and the birds, they're living on that one section, not the 3. The egg production is, in that instance, is an environmental benefit because we can have the guy take the crop off and leave the stubble, and we can flood it. And ducks can go in there in the fall. We can manage that, whether it be shorebirds or ducks.
If you think about wetlands, you're typically thinking about natural wetlands. You know, it doesn't mimic a natural wetland. But in terms of function, you know, the birds don't care if it's square or round or. What we really end up with is pools out there that we can manage quite closely to relatively ideal pool levels. The main thing we were trying to develop in the way of natural resource benefits was for migrating birds, both waterfowl and specifically for shorebirds, which have been in decline for many years. That just fits really well with how a flood control project typically works, and that is that you've got water most springs and you need to have it drawn down before the next big flood, which is usually in the spring. But in that interim period then between the last spring flood and the next spring flood, you can manage those levels and actually provide that shallow water kind of mud flat area that shorebirds really feed on.
We've concentrated the wildlife in there, and it just, I had seen a win-win the whole way on it. Since this, you know, was putting the projects on the ground, you can't expect the locals to bear all the financial burden. And that's one thing the mediation agreement has done. It's brought the environmental people to the table, not only in person, but with money. We consider DNR environmental, or the Minnesota Environmental Advocacy Group. We've had Audubon sit at the table, Nature Conservancy. These people will go to the legislature and lobby for money for the watersheds now. Before, it was non-existent.
And it's met all of its obligations and the things it's promised.
An update on the Red Path project.
And their projects in the Bois de Sioux watershed have now been easier because people say, well, yeah, that's what it's supposed to do, and yeah, I guess you guys can deliver on what you said you can do. So future projects should be a little bit easier because of the fact that one being so successful.
And there's certain areas in the watershed, all over our watershed, we've got that exact problem. And each and every project is going to try and address that. Keep the water off a good egg land. You know, pick a spot and let's use that spot, but let's use it for more than flood control.
It's certainly nice to see the water from the 75 square miles that are controlled by the North Ottawa project basically feeding into a storage unit with no water coming out. It's been a good example that others can look at and say, yeah, you know, maybe something like that would work in our area as well. And we're looking at others that are similar in the Bois de Sioux.
So much of our problem can be taken care of at a local level by just a little common sense. and the guys working together. I mean, if they don't want something on their land, we can find some land and do the treatment. We can do it for them in a group or community way.
Everybody got some benefit out of it. The farmland is still there to be farmed. The wildlife, waterfowl is there in the spring. They tried to make it a win-win situation for everybody.
It's functioned perfectly since we built it. It's done everything it was designed to do. We've made some believers out of it now. People aren't saying, gee, I don't know if I want one of those. They're saying, I think we need more of these. Let's build one down in my area. Our project team processes have gotten so busy in our watersheds because everybody wants something done in their area.
Our watershed, we're challenging, we're trying to lead out, to try and help the producers for the area. What we do for them invariably helps the bigger picture, helps the Red River.
I think now everyone out there sees how it can work, so there's no doubters anymore. I haven't had any complaints.